Everyone in the world experiences challenges daily, from remembering what to pick up at the supermarket to deadlines at work. Whether it's planning a wedding, a project at work, or just keeping track of the scores of a sports game, answers to these challenges take the form of raw data. Raw data that is created, organized, and analyzed. This is the magic that can be created in Excel. Each element, like a magic trick, that can be used to solve some of the challenges we experience in our daily lives. But before we begin, we need to start with a basic understanding. This understanding is the first building block in the foundation on which to build bigger, better, and more magical things. Let's get to it. For lesson 1, because I view Excel as a magic show, we will start off by getting familiar with the stage, being the workspace, and how it's been set up. Once you can navigate the stage, we can begin to do some tricks. So by the end of this lesson, you should be comfortable with finding your way around Excel, have acquired the tools to make the data look pretty, and have created your very first list in Excel. To get the synapses firing, I'm going to kick off with a question. What do you think are the different types of data that can be found in Excel? Hold your breath, as I will be revealing the answer later in this lesson. The first step in the journey is understanding what is Excel. If you Google the definition of the word Excel, it says to be exceptionally good at or proficient in an activity or subject. This is a really fitting definition, as Excel, being a spreadsheet application, is exceptionally good at housing data and having the functionality to interact with the data in various ways. It comes with the Microsoft Office package and, in my opinion, is one of the most effective productivity tools in the market. There are several reasons why I would strongly recommend using Excel. It is an application that allows you to create, understand, organize, analyze, graphically represent, and store data. It has fantastic features, including the ability to collaborate, meaning that 2 or more people can work in the same workbook at the same time. I find Excel so efficient, I even use it in my personal life to logically display data. One of my favorite reasons for using Excel is its ability to automate routine tasks, but loads more on that in Module 3 and 4. Let me take this opportunity to explain the magic of Excel. As individuals, we are unique in our thoughts, in the way we experience the world, and most especially in our ways of working. The Microsoft Office package caters for this, in that there are many ways to complete a task, depending on your style of working. The other interesting concept is when you see me doing a demonstration and you're asking yourself the question, isn't there another way of doing this? 9 out of 10 times, the answer will be yes. Did you know of the US businesses surveyed, 63% still rely on Excel as the main budgeting tool? On that note, something to look forward to is that by the end of this module, you will be able to create your very own budgeting template, like this one. And yes, this was created in Excel. Speaking of Excel, let's head there now. Here we have a blank workbook. However, there are a couple of steps that need to take place before we even get here. To open a workbook, I have Excel pinned to my taskbar, so I'll give that a click to get to the welcome screen. In the welcome screen, there are 2 options. You can click on a new blank workbook in the Home tab, or in the New tab, select Blank Workbook. Alternatively, you can browse for a workbook that you've worked on recently by selecting Open. For now, I'll go ahead and click on New Blank Workbook. You guessed it, there's another way to open a new workbook. Introducing the keyboard shortcuts. I will hold Control and N. As you can see, I now have another workbook open. To close the workbook, you can start by using the famous red X button, or you can select File, Close, and lastly, but certainly not least, we have Control W. Now let's look at saving the workbook. Option 1, there's a little disk icon in the heading of the workspace. As I hover my mouse over the icon, Excel provides you with a text box to indicate the function of that icon, in this case being Save. Sometimes they will even provide you with the shortcut keys, being Control S. The second option is to select File and Save. If you're anything like me that relies on applications to think for me in certain instances, I would highly recommend turning on the autosave function. When it comes to minimizing and maximizing, we have the options on the top right. The first one being minimize to completely close the screen. The second one is one of my favorite functionalities, being the restore down. In the restore down mode, you can resize your screen so that when you maximize and restore down again, your layout has been saved. As you can see, the maximize option becomes available in the restore down mode. So we'll click maximize to bring the screen back to the full position. The third option is to right click on the heading, where you will find Restore, Minimize, and Maximize. Now we've covered the first steps of navigating Excel. I have great news for you. Now that you've learned the setup and basic commands, you can easily apply them to other software applications, as they are pervasive throughout the Microsoft Office package, including most of the keyboard shortcuts. Something more specific to Excel are the worksheets. Worksheets are the backbone of Excel and are made up of rows, indicated by numbers, and columns, indicated by letters, and all the little blocks in between are known as cells, which is where we're going to enter and organize our data. Let's take a moment to process that information. How many rows are there in Excel? In Excel 2003, there were just over 65,000 rows. Yet, this was not enough. So how many rows do you think there are in Excel 2019? 1,048,576 rows. Moving along to question 2, how many columns are there in Excel? Excel 2003 had a little over 250 columns, and again, users needed much more. So how many columns do you think there are in Excel 2019? 16,384 columns. This change was introduced in Excel 2007. Now that's a lot of data. Like the cogs of a well-oiled machine, there are elements that make up the Excel workspace. These elements are the tabs, ribbons, groups, formula bar, and status bar. We'll have a look at these in more depth in just a minute. Once you become familiar with the workspace, you need to know how to get around it. Why, yes, there are options. For navigating our worksheet, we can make use of our mouse and the scroll bars, as well as keyboard shortcuts. I personally prefer shortcuts as it increases my efficiency when working across multiple worksheets and even multiple workbooks. Let's jump to Excel to take a look at some of these in practice. As a quick summary, here we have our worksheet made up of cells organized into rows and columns. Near the top, we have the tabs. Within the tabs, there are the different groups. The groups make up a space called the ribbon. So this is the home ribbon. Below the home ribbon, you'll find front and center the formula bar. And at the bottom of the workspace, you'll find the status bar, which is very handy to see high-level snapshots of data without a calculator. If I highlight a range of numbers, I can quickly see the average, count, and sum of that range. We'll look at customizing the status bar at a later stage. As for navigating, as I mentioned, we have the scroll bars for those who are very attached to their mouse. This one is for scrolling up and down, and this one is for scrolling left or right. Quick little challenge. Try scrolling to cell AR191. Not much fun, right? Imagine needing to scroll to cell XY 45,432. Even less fun. So that brings me to option 2 of navigating, our keyboard shortcuts. Using Control and the left arrow, it takes me to column A. Control up takes me to the first row. Control right takes me to the far right of the spreadsheet, and Control down takes me to the bottom. And you can see we can navigate around the entire spreadsheet in a matter of seconds. If you find yourself stuck in the middle of the ocean of cells, unsurprisingly, Control Home takes you right back to the beginning, cell A1. The great thing about these navigation shortcuts is it helps you to maneuver within large tables as well. Can you believe there is another tool to help you understand Excel better? That is the much overlooked cursor, also known as the mouse pointer. The role of the cursor is actually key, as it is an indicator of where your mouse is on the screen, so it forms an important part of being able to navigate Excel. As you move the cursor, depending on the data in Excel, the cursor changes shape and provides you with a clue as to the function or command available to you at that point. Excuse the pun. Using your cursor, you can select any cell in Excel. The selected cell will be indicated by a thick border. This is known as the active cell. Should you type any data, it will be entered into the active cell. And like we all have a home address, so do cells. The cell address can be found in the name box at the top left of the workspace, which will also indicate to you which cell is currently active in the workbook. Let's get practical and view these concepts in Excel now. Let's first have a look at the different cursors available to us, with the first one being the general pointer. If I hover over a cell I want to select and left-click, I have now activated the cell. The address of the activated cell is then shown in the name box over here. I can also highlight a group or range of cells by hovering, holding the right-click button, and dragging my mouse. I can highlight rows, columns, or both. If I want to select one cell again and hover my mouse over the bottom right corner, the cursor changes to a thin black cross. By holding down on the left click, you see the symbol which enables you to extend data. So you can copy and fill in information very quickly. Magical. Next we have the insertion cursor. By double-clicking in a cell, the cursor changes to look like a big letter I, and a flashing vertical line appears in the active cell. You can now enter your data. The white triangular cursor appears when working with menus. So if you want to select a tab or a command within a group, you use the white menu selector. Another selector is the black arrow that allows us to select an entire column or an entire row, or several, as is needed. On to formatting. As accountants, we are most certainly not allowed to do creative accounting, but I do let my hair down when it comes to formatting my spreadsheets. The toolkit available to us in Excel can be found on the Home tab in the Font group. Here you choose from an array of different font styles and change the size of the font by selecting the size or using the big A or small a buttons. You have the option to bold, italicize, and underline your data. And then, of course, you can use Control B, Control I, and Control U as the keyboard shortcuts. On that point, it's trivia time again. What other shortcut can you use to access the bold, italics, and underline commands? With these 3 commands, you can make your spreadsheet go from 0 to magical. But how else can you access them apart from the Control key? Did you know that you can use the Alt key on your keyboard? For bold, you use Alt H1, for italics, Alt H2, and underline, Alt H3. Remember, don't hold the Alt key. The Alt key provides you with a whole world of alternate keyboard shortcut combinations, so you could effectively operate your computer just by using your keyboard. Moving along in the font group, you can also create borders around the cells to group data together or make the data easier to read. For example, you can add a border around a total. Lastly, this is where you can really have some fun by changing the background color of the cells or the color of your font. This really adds a nice touch to your spreadsheet by making them easier on the eye. If you've ever experienced typing in a cell and your numbers or words just don't fit, you can just highlight the column and adjust the width. You follow the same process for adjusting the row height, and in doing these adjustments, you'll encounter another cursor, the 2-headed arrow, to allow you to resize. When you see the 2-headed arrow, you then have the option to click and drag the column or cell you want to adjust, or you can simply double-click. You're finally heading towards your first practical of this lesson. But first, let's answer the question I posed to you at the beginning of this lesson. We've talked a lot about data, but what types of forms can this data take? They're on your keyboards. Numbers and letters. They make up our dates, decimals, and words. They even make up the third data type, being our formulas. While we use the term function and formula interchangeably, there is a difference. Functions are predefined pieces of code where you need to add specific types of values in a specific order that we will cover in the next slide. Formulas are instructions that you give to Excel to perform a calculation, like adding 2 numbers together. Some food for thought is that formulas can contain functions. When you use a function in Excel, it requires you to enter the information in a particular structure called syntax. So for each of the functions listed here, being sum, min, max, and count, you can see the structure is an equal sign, the name of the function, and 2 brackets. You will then include your data within the brackets. We'll look at each of these functions in the practical. Before we do that, I need to tell you about the auto functions. They perform the same calculations, but instead of typing them, you can get the total of a range of numbers with the click of a mouse. Let's say we have a range of numbers we wanted to add together. It's perfectly acceptable to use the plus sign. But what do you do when you have an extensive range? We can use the sum function. So we'll enter an equal sign, sum, open brackets, and highlight our range. Close the brackets and press enter. For the minimum, the smallest number in the list, we can use equals min. And you'll notice a list pop up with suggested functions. We want to select the first one highlighted in blue, so you can just press tab and highlight your range, close the brackets, and press enter. Let's do the same with max to work out the largest number within that range. And lastly, we'll do the same with count, which is a really handy function that cannot be performed on a calculator. Beware, the limitation of count is it only works on numbers. And if you're like me and not a fan of typing, auto functions are a handy feature to save the day. Let's complete the same exercise using the auto functions. With auto sum, we can click the button, highlight our range, and press enter. With auto min, click on the drop down, select min, highlight the range, and press enter. We'll do the same with max, and lastly with count. As you can see, the same results, but can be completed in a fraction of the time. So what do these functions tell us? The sum gives us the total of a range of numbers. The minimum indicates to us that the tie is the cheapest item to have dry cleaned, while the wedding dress is the most expensive, and that there are 12 items that we can possibly give to these dry cleaners to dry clean for us. The last concept we will be discussing for this lesson is the basics of the clipboard group in the Home tab. For the sake of efficiency, instead of typing something out over and over, you can utilize the copy and paste commands. If you want to move data or sections of data, you can utilize the cut and paste commands. And let's not forget our handy keyboard shortcuts. To copy, we'll use Ctrl+C, Ctrl+X to cut, and Ctrl+V to paste. On that note, go ahead and answer the following question. In what year were the copy and paste commands invented? These commands were manually done many years until they were added to computer programs. In what year do you think this happened? Somewhere in the mid-70s. Surprisingly, Larry Tesler invented cut, copy, and paste somewhere between 1973 and 1976. Thanks, Larry. Hopefully you're fired up after that bit of trivia. So let's put everything we've learned in this lesson into practice and create our very first list, something that looks like this. Imagine you just got your paycheck and you want to get some groceries. The importance of the list is so that A, you don't forget to buy anything, and B, to ensure you don't exceed the budget in one shopping trip. So with Ctrl+N on a blank workbook, I'm going to start entering a list of items. You can give this heading any name you find reasonable or that makes sense to you. So perhaps I will add some tuna, pasta, and now I will make use of our keyboard shortcuts to copy and paste the list. And congratulations, you've created your first list using the text data type. I'm going to add a bit more to this and insert a cost heading in column C, and using Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V to paste, I've now entered some numbers. The last data type we'll use is a formula. So I will add a total at the bottom of the list, and I'm going to use the AutoSum function to add up the numbers in my list. Because I have inserted the AutoSum function directly below the list, Excel suggests a range to add up. I will just hit enter and I've got a total. And done. However, I can't really say I like the way it looks. I'm not sure about you. So I'm going to give my list a heading and we'll format this. Voila! Looking much better. The last tweak is to resize the column containing the items so that I can see the rest of the words. when I see the two-headed arrow, I will double-click, and Excel will automatically resize the column. Lastly, I'll insert some borders, and my list is ready. And that, unfortunately, brings us to the end of the first act in the magic show that is Excel. I look forward to seeing you in the next one that you have scheduled. But before you go, I would like to challenge you to practice creating your own list. Try using all the tools you've acquired during this lesson, including formatting, as well as make use of all the different data types. But for now, have fun practicing the basics. Because remember, if you don't use it, you lose it. Ciao for now.